Good day. Welcome to episode 11 of our channel. So, in this video, we will be discussing the case of People versus Oanis. This is an old case, a 1943 En Banc case, where the court discussed mistake of fact. But in some law books, you will see that this case is also included in under the topic error in personae. Okay, so let us uh, dive into the facts of the case. So, what happened? On the afternoon of December 24, 1938, Captain Monsod, the Constabulary Provincial Inspector in Cabanatuan, Nueva Ecija, received a telegram from his superior regarding Anselmo Balagtas. No? Balagtas was a notorious escaped convict at that time. The telegram instructed officers to locate Balagtas, who was reportedly with a dancer named Irene, and the order was to get him dead or alive. Captain Monson assembled a team that included Corporal Galanta and contacted Antonio Oanis, the chief of police then of Cabanatuan. Because Oanis knew Irene and where she might be staying, he led Galanta and another officer to her house on or at Rizal Street. When the group arrived at Irene's house, Oanis approached one Brigida Malyari, who was then sleeping banana stalks, and asked her where Irene's room was. Brigida indicated the place, and upon further inquiry also said that Irene was sleeping with her paramour. Brigida Trembling immediately returned to her own room, which was very near that occupied by Irene and her paramour. So tinanong siya, tinuro niya kung nasaan, and Juanis and the team went to that room. So the accused Oanis and Galanta then went to the room of Irene, and they saw a man sleeping with his back towards the door where they were. This is a very important fact. Kasi pagdating nila, nakita nila may taong tulog at nakatalikod sa kanila. So no way of identifying who that person was. Then, upon seeing that person, the accused simultaneously or successively fired at him with their 32 and 45 caliber revolvers. Awakened by the gunshots, Irene saw her paramour already wounded, and looking at the door where the shots came, she saw both accused still firing at him. Shocked by the entire scene, Irene fainted. It turned out later that the person shot and killed was not the target, was not the notorious criminal Anselmo Balagtas. Rather, it was a peaceful, or he was a peaceful and innocent citizen named Serapio Texon, the paramour of Irene. So Texon here was at the wrong place at the wrong time, no? Because he was just sleeping, yet he was murdered. So that was the defense of the accused in this case. So both accused argued that they acted in innocent mistake of fact in the honest performance of their official duties. Both of them believing that Texon, the deceased, was actually their target, Balagtas. So they argued that they incur no criminal liability. So the issue, whether or not the accused were criminally liable for the death of Texon. In deciding the case, the Supreme Court held that the accused found no circumstances whatsoever which would press them to immediate action. That's given. Pagdating nila, di ba? Di man nila verify kung sino or wala naman hawak na armas yung tulog na tao. According to the court, the person in the room being then asleep, accused had ample time and opportunity to ascertain his identity without hazard to themselves, and could even effect a bloodless arrest if any reasonable effort to that end had been made, as the victim was unarmed, no? According to the witness Irene. This indeed is the only legitimate course of action for the accused to follow, even if the victim was really Balagtas, as they were instructed not to kill Balagtas at sight, but to arrest him and to get him dead or alive only if resistance or aggression is offered by him. Hindi naman nanlaban eh. But regardless, kahit nanlaban yan or may armas siya, merong opportunity yung mga police officers here to arrest the accused or that person without using violence. Yet, even without ascertaining the identity of the deceased, they immediately fired their firearms, which caused the death of the deceased Texon. The crime committed by the accused here is not merely criminal negligence, according to the court, because the killing was intentional, it was not accidental. And as once held by the court in other cases, or in another case, a deliberate intent to do an unlawful act is essentially inconsistent with the idea of reckless imprudence. And where such unlawful act is willfully done, a mistake in identity, error in personae, of the intended victim cannot be considered as reckless imprudence to support a plea of mitigated liability. As the deceased was killed while asleep, the crime committed is murder with the qualifying circumstance of alivotia or treachery. So here, there was a discussion on whether or not the liability of the accused was merely a culpable felony. So did they merely commit culpable felony? The answer is no. Because here the court held that the killing was with intent, with criminal intent. Okay, so it was an intentional felony. It was never accidental because what the perpetrators did here was to deliberately fire their arms, kill the person. And it was not an accident. It was performed with mens rea, with the guilty mind. Okay? So here, both accused were held liable for murder and they were guilty of said crime. Let me just remind you that please read the full text of this case in case you are a first year law student. This is just a review, and you please determine the issue on where this case was placed in your outline. If it's a mistake of identity or mistake of fact, then study accordingly depending on the given issue. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something. And we can relate this, if you want to relate this with another case, we actually have the case of US versus Achong, which we already discussed in our channel. And you compare why in the case of Achong, mistake of fact was appreciated to negate mens rea, to negate dolo or criminal intent. Okay, that was in episode 7. And also, if you want to learn more on error on personae, you can watch episode 13. We will have a full discussion of that concept on episode 13. Thank you very much for listening.